Okay, I've got it. It was Miss Scarlet in the library with a lead pipe. Wait, that's not this movie? Shoot. Okay. Call Mr. Poirot so we can get this all straightened out, please. Thanks. All right. Anyway, this is Old, New, and Now Playing. Hello and welcome to Old, New, and Now Playing, your time machine through the world of movies. I'm your host, Will Robinson Smith, and if this is your first time joining me, thank you so much for checking out this channel. Now, of course, this is a series meant in part for movie fanatics who are going to be able to reminisce about some really great movies, but it's meant primarily for people like me who really love watching movies and love the movie world, but just haven't been exposed to tons of them over time. And so, throughout the course of this series, we'll be looking at film throughout the decades based on the title of the series. Old, meaning 30 years or older, new within the last 30 years, and now playing, of course, are movies that are still in theaters. And we'll be talking without spoilers, so you get a taste of the film, but you get the opportunity to fully enjoy it when you're able to see it for yourself. And since we're going to be talking about movies of the past and movies of the present, I thought it was also important to include a component talking about movies of the future. And so at the beginning of each episode, we'll have a movie news segment where I'll break down some topics within the last couple of days and give you my take on them. I want to hear back from you about them in the comments section. And so let's get right to it. And that section is called The Rundown.
Say it. Don't you say it.
I left.
Come on!
Seeing as it is Monday, let's get things rolling with a look back at this weekend's box office. With little surprise, coming in at number 1 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, making $35.3 million. Number 2 in its second week is X-Men Apocalypse with $22.3 million. Me Before You comes in at third place with $18.3 million, and rounding out the top 5 are Alice Through the Looking Glass with $10.7 million, and The Angry Birds Movie with $9.8 million. There are a few notable points to glean from this week. According to Box Office Mojo, Paramount had projected the Turtles to pull in between $35 and $40 million, so this hits on the low end of the spectrum. The previous film made about $65.5 million, which is not in the direction I'm sure the studio was hoping to see this franchise go. Both of the sequels from last weekend took a more than 60% plunge from week 1 to week 2, which saw them drop from slots 1 and 2 to 2 and 4. Andy Samberg and the folks at Universal didn't have a good weekend. The pop musical mockumentary, Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping, opened in 8th place with only $4.6 million. But it wasn't all bad news this weekend. Even though it's now dropped out of the top 10, Disney's Zootopia has now crossed the $1 billion mark, making it the 5th animated movie in history to do so. Next, Friday came with the sad news that the greatest of all time, 3-time world heavyweight boxing champion Muhammad Ali died after a 32-year battle with Parkinson's disease. Condolences and remembrances came pouring in from around the world, including from the film industry. Actor Will Smith portrayed the iconic boxer in 2001's Ali, which gave him an Academy Award nomination. Taking to Facebook on Saturday morning, Smith wrote, "You shook up the world. My mentor and my friend. You changed my life. Rest in peace." According to The Hollywood Reporter, during Smith's presentation of the Muhammad Ali Legacy Award during the Sports Illustrated Sportsperson of the Year dinner, he spoke about the movie experience, saying, "For nearly 2 years, I worked to transform myself into the man who changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali and shook up the world. That's what really makes my job so beautiful as an actor. For 4 or 5 months at a time, I get to wear people's lives, so I got to wear Muhammad Ali's greatness. I got to study and feel and embody the soul of the man. From the foundations of Islam and the strengths of his Muslim faith and his life, to the beautiful wake that he always leaves in his magnificent path." Michael B. Jordan, who starred in last year's Creed, also commented, saying, "To have his life pass away is tragic, but you've got to celebrate his life. He lived a really, really long life. It was purposeful. He inspired tons of people." And finally, in a Deadline exclusive, Warner Brothers and Safe House Pictures have announced a director and writer for their upcoming contemporary adaptation of Alexander Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo. The Signal director William Eubank is set to direct the project, with Joe Pekoski writing. Pekoski is one of the main writers for the WGN series Underground, which was picked up for a second season and served as a producer for both the Netflix series Daredevil and the NBC show Heroes. According to Cinema Blend, the last big screen adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo was done back in 2002, with Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce starring. No release date for this new adaptation has been announced. And now that you're all caught up on the news, let's head straight into our main segment, your feature presentation. Murder on the Orient Express is a 1974 film based on the 1934 novel of the same name by acclaimed author Agatha Christie. The film itself was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, and it gave Ingrid Bergman her 3rd Oscar. It was her first win in the category of Best Actress in a Supporting Role, but we'll talk more about her performance in a bit. Now more than 40 years since its release, the story will be heading back to the big screen in a new adaptation which will be directed by and starring Kenneth Branagh. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Ridley Scott, Simon Kinberg, and Mark Gordon will produce the film for Fox, and it's currently set for a November 22, 2017 release date. But enough about future adaptations. Murder on the Orient Express begins with a young girl named Daisy Armstrong, who we learn was kidnapped and killed, and whose death leads to the subsequent deaths of her parents and others. Fast forward 5 years, we meet our principal cast of high-class travelers who embark from Istanbul on the Orient Express in the dead of winter. While on board, one of the passengers, an American known as Ratchet, played by Oscar-nominated actor Richard Widmark, is mysteriously murdered just as the train stalls in a snowbank. Luckily, one of the passengers just so happens to be Hercule Poirot, a famous Belgian detective who was a popular recurring character in Christie's novels. Here, Poirot is played by Albert Finney, who was nominated for an Academy Award for his performance. Poirot has to solve the murder while crews work to get the snow cleared and the train moving again. If you're a fan of good murder mystery pieces with some dry humor sprinkled in, then you will thoroughly enjoy this movie. The story itself is quite compelling, and in typical Agatha Christie style, we're introduced to our characters at the top of the story, and then when the crime occurs, by that point, they're all trapped together. And, of course, one of the things that makes this story so compelling is the ridiculously talented cast that was assembled for this film. I mean, when you have a cast that includes Sean Connery and he's not the top draw of the film, that's saying something. Beyond the Bond star, this movie also includes the likes of Oscar nominee Lauren Bacall as the haughty and easily irritable Mrs. Hubbard.
Well, my second husband, Mr. Hubbard, would have raised hell. No place for my makeup bag, no ice in my drinking water, and the hot water burps as it comes out of the faucet.
Oscar winner Martin Balsam, who plays Signor Bianchi, the director of the train line who secures Poirot passage aboard the train.
He did it. He murdered Gusset. He practically confessed as much.
Oscar winner Wendy Hiller, who plays the curt yet humorous Princess Dragomirov.
Don't you agree the man must have entered my compartment to gain access to Mr. Ratchet?
I can think of no other reason, madame.
And Norman Bates himself, Anthony Perkins, who plays McQueen, the assistant to the soon-to-be-deceased Ratchet.
He was collecting Gorgon pottery with considerable success, and I was trying to collect oil concessions, with so little success that I went bankrupt, and he offered me the job. I took it.
And that's not even half of the talent that's stacked up in this film. But of course, at its core is the detective who's driving the story forward, Poirot, who is played wonderfully by Albert Finney. Poirot is a character that is very particular about how things should be done and isn't afraid to take charge of every situation. Throughout the film, Finney makes very specific acting choices that make him feel authoritative, yet sympathetic as the lead. One of the notable points of this movie is that because you have such high-caliber actors working within a tight space, you get great moments of nonverbal communication fitted around the interviews and interactions. Honestly, some of the funniest moments in the movie came just from a simple glance from one character to another, where so much is being said with a cock of the head or an eye roll. And when talking about standout acting in this movie, we have to talk about Ingrid Bergman's performance. The Casablanca star plays Greta in this movie, a woman who, through life circumstances, has become a bit slower and also an avid missionary. She doesn't appear in much of the movie, but it's during her interview scene with Poirot that I was really absorbed into her performance. The moment is one continuous take during which the camera never pans away from her face. Because of this, she has to captivate the audience with just her expression and words, and she does. I could almost hear the wheels turning in the character's mind as she recalls moments of her past and what information she can offer to help solve the murder. It's a truly captivating performance and something I thought was akin to watching live theater, but of course from a much closer vantage point. But beyond Bergman's acting chops, one of the things that makes this scene and the rest of the movie work so well is the cinematography and the writing. Whether we're talking about color choice, which is an important component seen much in the opening of the movie and throughout, or just the camera work, not only navigating around the train, but within it to accentuate just how small of a space they are working with, you can't ignore just how important the cinematography is to this movie. On top of which, in those scenes are moments of great writing, which made me laugh.
You never smile, Madame la Princesse.
My doctor has advised against it.
Or stop and reanalyze everything I just saw, as with the final unraveling of the mystery near the end of the movie.
Let us not for the moment ask the question how, but the question why, which will tell us how.
The quiet film captivates you with heavy doses of dialogue that feel well paced. However, while this is certainly a standout film, no movie is perfect, and while I enjoyed the editing on the whole, there were some editing choices that kinda did bother me. When Poirot is explaining the case at the end, and at times when he is bringing up the Armstrong case, the movie cuts away to newspaper clippings with a rotating dissolve, which is fine, but those moments feel rushed, and the clipping is up for such a brief moment that it's hard to discern what I'm looking at and pay attention to what he is saying. And being that this is a film of the mid-70s, I understand that Hollywood wasn't as progressive as it is today, but it was quite striking at the beginning of the film to watch the minority men and women relegated to almost their most stereotypical form. Hopefully the Kenneth Branagh rendition will take note to not make that same choice, but I guess we'll see in about a year and a half. Overall, this is definitely a movie worth watching. The characters are compelling, the story is well written, and it's a microcosm of some of the best acting talent of that era. I gave Murder on the Orient Express a 9 out of 10. It's fun to watch, and I feel like it's a movie that would be enjoyable on repeat viewings. So those are my thoughts on Murder on the Orient Express. When you've had a chance to see the movie, I'd love to see your comments and thoughts about it in the comment section below. And of course, all these actors and actresses have had amazing careers. What are some of your favorite movies starring them? Love to hear about all that too. Let's start that dialogue going. And for today's episode, we'll wrap things up with my Common Thread Challenge. Now, in every week, each movie will be connected to the next by some way, shape, or form, whether that be director, actor, theme. So here's my challenge to you. Before Wednesday, can you figure out what links this movie to Wednesday's movie Highlander? If you think you've got it, let me know in the comments section. That will do it for today's episode of Old, New, and Now Playing. Remember, if you ever want to have a movie-related question featured on this show, whether it be about the movie I'm reviewing that day, or movie news, or just a general movie-related query, you can always tweet at me. My handle is @W_Robinson_Smith. Just use the hashtag PopTweets so I know it's a question you want to have featured on this show. Or you can send me an email at oldnewnowplaying@gmail.com. Just put PopTweets question in the subject line. And guys, that'll do it for today. You can catch me again on Wednesday. We'll be talking about Highlander. I'll see you then.